Welcome, good morning to all of you. I'm here with Jean-Francois in the same virtual room. So physically we are, of course, 50 kilometers in our case from each other. Jean-Francois is pre-sales manager. He'll conduct the webinar, but let me please introduce the webinar and put it into context. Now, this feels a bit like the daily update from the Security Council from government each time at 11. This is the fourth webinar we are doing. So we had two last week and one on Tuesday. You will see right away which ones we did. If you are interested in one of the other one that we did in the past, we will soon make the recording available on the website. So please watch our events page on the website. We hope you're all well and in good health. So let's kick off and have a first look at the basically the broader picture. So what we do at Agelos is helping customers to turn their data into a strategic asset. And this covers basically the complete data supply chain. So it starts with data integration, which includes technologies such as change data capture, modern data warehouse automation, data preparation. And in this domain, we commercialize and we support technologies such as Qlik Unity, with Qlik Unity Replicate and Qlik Unity Compose, time extender, Qlik Data Catalyst. The second part, after we've integrated and ingested the data, it's about analytics. So the second part is about visualization and analytics, and there we support technologies Qlik and Power BI. And then finally, the purpose, of course, is to turn these insights into valuable actions and bring them, put them in the hands of people and help them in the digital transformation of the company. Now, as Agelos, we provide not only the technology, but especially also the services to make this work. So it includes helping you with the architecture, how to set up all these different components, up to the custom development of BI solutions. So you see here an overview of the different webinars. If I can have the next slide, Jean-Francois, thank you. So the purpose of the webinars is basically to share our vision, our knowledge and best practices in those different domains. Now, some of those webinars are very specific or product focused, such as the one last week on version management in a Qlik environment. And we had one on a feature update and augmented intelligence in Qlik. The ones of this week are more or broader in nature. Like the one on Tuesday was about the overall architecture of analytics and the different components and providing basically a framework for you to help make decisions in setting up this data supply chain. And that is also the case for the one of today, which is around enterprise data management. And although the product that we will talk about, Qlik Data Catalyst, is a product from Qlik, it works together with the different visualization tools such as Qlik Power BI or Tableau. So it is basically a technology that Qlik acquired last year and turned into a product called Qlik Data Catalyst, but applicable to several visualization technologies. Although they did publish a version specifically for Qlik, which is called Qlik Data Catalyst for QVDs, but Jean-Francois will talk about that later on. We also highly recommend the webinar of next week, Tuesday, which focuses specifically on time extender and modern data warehouse automation. So we call it making data available for analytics and AI, but we feature their technology, time extender, which helps you in automating the data warehouse, and again, publish it then to a visualization tool such as Qlik Power BI and Tableau. So feel free to register for the remaining webinars next week. And with that, I'm going to switch to Jean-Francois. Just one practical thing. When you connected to the webinar, you see a panel normally to the right called questions. If at any time you have a question, please put the question in there, and we will handle, time permitting, of course, at the end of this 1 hour slot, we will handle the most general questions or the questions that we will get from the audience. So with that, I hand over the word to Jean-François and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you very much, Edwin, for this introduction. So we will talk today, as Edwin said, about enterprise data management with Qlik Data Catalyst. So to introduce this, let me first explain a little bit the history of the evolution of business intelligence, or of what we see in the market. So in the beginning, business intelligence was just IT providing centralized access to data. But after some time, companies found out that different business units had different needs. And this led to a decentralized organization of the data, but still in the hands of some key business users. That was the second generation. Now we are in the third generation of BI, where this decentralized data should now be accessible by anyone in the organization. And that's what we call data democratization. So that everything, all the data, all the information is available throughout the organization. And that's actually where we stand. And I would say that what we are going to explain today will be in line with this approach. So if we look at the Gartner analysis, we found out that Gartner already 2 years ago, in 2018, said that in order to make the data fully democratized, well, they predicted that a created catalog of both internal and external data would be necessary to optimize the value of analytical investment. So that means, in fact, that already some time ago, they were looking at a way to organize and catalog the data, both internally and externally. So we're talking about mixing data from different sources and bringing them together in one single catalog. And that's really the key to make sure that business users, end users, can understand and have access to that data.
Jean-François,
yes.
We have a problem with the sound, so can you please do a quick check?
Yes, can you hear me correctly when I talk?
A bit better, but not as it normally is.
Yeah, that is strange, because normally I see no issue here on the sound, but I'll try to speak slowly and clearly so that everyone can understand me. Can you confirm you can understand me correctly now?
Yeah, now it seems to be better. Thank you.
Okay, my apologies for that. Normally, it should be understandable. If it's the case again, feel free to let me know.
Yeah, I'll interrupt you when it goes bad. So sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I was talking about the data. In fact, when you look at this, you see that data. Well, data is the foundation of the new economy, and especially bringing the data towards analytics, and then one step further into insights. So there is a lot of data to be used and to be taken in order to achieve those insights. And well, the problem with the data is that actually no one knows where to find that data. Of course, there is data a bit everywhere, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand and to find out where the data is. With the data explosion, the data sources are so diverse that it becomes really a pain to find your way in this data maze. Where do you find the data that you specifically need? And actually, there are several ways to get access to this data. And the first step into this access, this first solution, was to provide a service, a specific centralized service where the data was delivered based on specific requests. A bit like in a pharmacy where qualified people at the counter will deliver what you need. And the point is, of course, that in such a solution, IT becomes quickly a bottleneck, because you need to go through them to get access to the data. So that brought us to the next step, which is to organize the data so that the IT people can find their way more efficiently, so that they can be quicker to respond. And that's actually the first centralized data warehouse. So we're bringing together everything in one single warehouse.
Jean-François, can you check again, because the sound is going worse?
Okay. Do the other also have that problem? Because I see 100% throughput here, so I'm a bit surprised.
So maybe you should disconnect and reconnect again. Maybe that's safer.
Let me just. So I just unmuted and unmuted. Is this better?
No.
Okay, apologies for this. I'll try to quickly disconnect and start again.
So apologies to the audience. We'll try to reconnect. Shouldn't take too much time, and hope we can solve the audio problems like that. So anyhow, it's a proof that our webinar is live. Now, I would have preferred that we didn't have the sound problems, but things can happen. So maybe it are his kids that are using too much bandwidth in talking to their teacher over the web or in playing games. So okay, so I see Jean-François appear again.
Yes, I'm back again. I hope you can hear me better now.
So you are now presenter again. This sounds better. So let's
try it again.
Yeah.
So I hope you could follow. Let me quickly go back to what I was talking. So in a nutshell, I started with a first solution to get access to the data, which was bringing everything available to IT. So IT becomes, of course, the bottleneck when you do that, but at least you have someone in a central way who can provide you the data. That was the first solution. Then the second solution is actually to start to organize the data so that the IT people can find their way more efficiently. So that's about still IT being responsible for the data, but organizing and providing the data to the end user through centralized data warehouses. In that case, of course, IT, who is still the central point, the bottleneck, it can bring some problems. So the next solution would is a self-service solution where you have key users that can get the data themselves through data marts, for instance. And the business key users, of course, are more qualified to build queries as they know much better what the business needs are. So this brought already a step forward, because in that case you had knowledgeable business people who would be responsible for giving access to the data. But still, there was only a few business key users in each department, so there was still a bottleneck on that point. So this brought us to the fourth solution, the fourth generation. It's the last evolution, where non-qualified, non-technical business users also want to be able to fully serve themselves, a bit like with an online mobile shopping experience, where it's actually the end consumer who is choosing what he wants to have, and in this case, for data, it would be the same. So this is the true democratization of data, making it easy to access through a self-service shopping portal. That's the last generation. And that's actually the solution that we are talking about. However, this requires a well-organized self-service catalog, just like the Amazon catalog. When you go against Amazon and you want to find out all the advantages from the previous solutions combined into one. Well, actually, here you would have a centralized distribution, also with experts that create value from raw goods, but still a convenient self-service order handling. And it's the combination of those four things that would actually bring to the optimal solution. Now, this solution is it's about a business challenge that is behind, and in fact, well, so if you want to apply this complex data world to the complex data world of today, well, you have a lot of sources that are not known by the end users. You have a lot of data that is just not accessible through easy-to-use tools, and people don't know how suitable the available data is, how reliable it is, how frequently it is updated, and how accurate it is. And also, many data sets comes in format that cannot be exploited immediately. So in order to work with that, well, there are also a few other challenges at really the provisioning level, because you will have technical limitations. You will need to rely on heavy ETL processes. Of course, you still have a centralized IT, which is not easy to organize, and then you have to comply to security restrictions. And finally, also for the end users, well, actually, the expectations are changing every day. They don't have the same needs all. They don't have the same needs all the time. So that means that well, when the end users need to get access to the data at a specific day, and the next day they have another need with slight differences, they want to be able to make those changes themselves. Also, they will have different definitions of the same indicators, leading to different versions of the truth. So as a result, many organizations actually don't use their data due to the difficulty to overcome these challenges. So, well, let's imagine now a solution in which well, actually, the data is available in a ready-to-go format that the business users can access this data through self-service. That the data preparation can be done in minutes instead of months, and that the data quality is well known, very verified, and trustworthy. So when you have that solution, well, that the delivery becomes as easy as accessing a library or a grocery store, or even better, an online shopping experience. So that's the solution that we want to propose today, which is called Qlik Data Catalyst. Now, Qlik Data Catalyst is in fact well, it enables you to bring your data towards the end user, and also to ensure that it is always available and always in conformity. So any data from anywhere in any formats can be combined, onboarded, enriched, further prepared by knowledgeable people, and then made available for end users. So what is important there, of course, is that the end user can find their way easily, even if the data behind is quite complex. So, well, what is Data Catalyst exactly doing? Well, if you see on this chart on the left, this really represents the mess of data that is actually available everywhere inside the company, but also outside the company. So you have different solutions, different type of data that is distributed everywhere in the organization. And then this data actually well, needs to be made available for the end user. You need to be able to find the data back, to search through the data. You need to make sure that the data is reliable, that the quality is there. Also, you need to know what it relates to. If you have data that comes from one data source and from another data source, you of course need to make the end user understand which data relates to another data, how it comes together. This is important if you want to build visualization, or if you want just to view the information. You need to apply security so that only people that are supposed to get access to the data can actually have access. And of course, depending on each role of the user, you want to make sure that they get access in the proper way. So all of this is managed inside Data Catalyst. And Data Catalyst will then allow you to push this data towards a lot of consumption tools like BI and reporting, and dashboards, like data science tools, like applications, cloud applications, and so on. So you see, it's really a key point within the data flows. Now, if you look more inside an architecture, there are a lot of tools that exist in an organization ecosystem that actually work on that. On the left, of course, you have a lot of different data sources. It could be structured data or unstructured data. You could have already some tools that actually replicate your data, or that is transforming your data through ETL tools. You might have some data governance tools to manage metadata, things like that. And also platforms on which you want to store your data. For instance, a Hadoop platform, or some cloud structures, Azure Cloud or something like that, where you're going to host your data. And then, of course, you want to push all this towards the business intelligence solution, using data warehousing, using data science tools, or even through self-service BI. Well, Data Catalyst really fits right in the middle of that. So, well, actually, you don't, if you already invested in some parts of those tools, Data Catalyst will actually integrate with those tools and leverage what you already have defined in those tools. So if you have defined metadata in data governance tools, it will take over this metadata. If you already defined a data movement towards a data lake, for instance, well, you can just reuse this data lake, and so on and so forth. If you already deployed reports, you can actually use Data Catalyst to further push information to those reports. So it will fit straight in the middle of your solution. So that's where Data Catalyst is fitting. And actually, it does that by performing 4 different steps. And the 4 different steps are explained here. So you have data onboarding. What is data onboarding? It's bringing the data, for instance, into a data lake, accessing multiple sources, making a copy of the data. Or if you don't want it to make copy, it can just take the metadata, so just the descriptions of the data, but leave the data on the original source. So the 2 are possible, but onboarding means that I want to make sure that this data is known by my system, and that it can relate to all the other data that is made available, and that it can be pushed towards the end user, either by copying it or by actually pointing to the right location. Then once it has onboarded the data, we want, of course, to build a catalog on top of that and to enrich that catalog. So we want to add good business definitions, or any input from a data governance tool. We want to apply machine intelligence on it to make sure that, for instance, when data is not valid, it's automatically detected. We want to automatically identify the data and inspect it. For instance, if it is sensitive data, we want to scramble the data automatically, recognize some specific fields to be scrambled, for instance. All of this in an automated way. So we want to enrich this catalog automatically. This is also what Data Catalyst will enable. Then, of course, we want to prepare the data to be consumed. So that means that we might want, for instance, to make the data more scalable by building a star schema, by pushing it to a platform that is very powerful, like Hadoop or a cloud solution. We want to transform the data into something understandable by end users. So that's the data preparation step, the 3rd step. And then the 4th step is about publishing the data. So in that case, well, of course, when you have a data available in the catalog, you don't want it to stay in the catalog. If you do shopping on Amazon, Well, the finality is not just to do shopping, it's actually to get that product delivered to you at your door. And it's exactly what here Data Catalyst is doing. It's taking the data from your catalog and it's pushing it towards the end user, straight to your reports or to other tools like machine intelligence tools or advanced analytics tools. So you want to get it all the way down to the end user, like with a shopping experience. This is what Data Catalyst is enabling. So different steps, 4 different steps are all included inside Data Catalyst. Now I talked, of course, a lot about the capabilities. So let's move towards a demonstration. I think it's always better to see the system at work. So I propose to show you a little demonstration of what you can do with Data Catalyst. So let me show you first the Data Catalyst interface. So let's take the application. There we are. Okay, I'll show it to you in a second. There it comes. So the interface goes through a browser. So what you see here is the Data Catalog. So of course, it's like if you would go to Amazon and go through all the products, well, you would have a lot of data sets on this screen. So of course, you can scroll through it, but it won't be very easy to find back your data. So the first thing, of course, in this catalog is that we want to organize this catalog to classify the information. Like when you go on the web shopping, you would classify through different types of products. Here we're going to classify the data. And for that, you can use specific filters. So we are going to bring data sets together. For instance, here, if I'm looking for a specific topic, like my customers, I select my customer topic. And by applying this filter, I will only see the data sets that are actually related to my customers. So you have a customer dimension, you have payment information for the customers, you have the country of the customers, the store where the customer has been, and so on. So this information comes together into topics that you can define. So this is one way to find back your information. What you can also do, of course, is to search for specific tags. For instance, if I want to have information about my contact people, I select the contact tag, and again, within the catalog, I will find specific contact data that comes from my customer 360 degree. So these are all different ways to get through to an organized way to your actual information. Now, of course, this requires to know where to look for. And usually when you do shopping, the first thing you do is not to browse all the categories of products. When you do shopping, what you do is you just search like in Google. So here you have a search box and you start typing what you are looking for. For instance, here I want to have information about, let me just remove the filter first, because otherwise I won't find a lot of information. Okay, and so when I type now world, it will find specific data sets that are actually linked to my search. Now here I typed in world, but the data sets are not called world. So how did he find that? Well, in fact, because a data set is not only a name and a title, but it has a lot of metadata behind. For instance, in this case, the business name is worldwide sales. So it found back a match based on the business name. It would also match on tags. It would match on business descriptions. It would match on detailed fields that you will find inside your data set. So you just type something you're looking for, and the system will help you to find it back much more easily by like you would do in a normal search engine. So in this case, for instance, I found the global transaction data set. Now let me explain a little bit what we see here on this tile. So we see that this information is about worldwide sales, that it's consolidated from specific worldwide sources, that it has to do with sales and with gold. Okay, that's fine. But you see also 3 KPIs here that are shown. It's an operational KPI, a quality KPI, and the popularity KPI. Well, actually, these KPIs, and of course you can define them yourself, but these KPI will give very important information about the actual data set. For instance, in this case, the operational KPI is telling me that this data set has been loaded regularly. If the data set has not been loaded for the last month, or is very old, or is not frequently reloaded, the operational KPI will go down. So when it says 100%, it means it has been recently loaded and that it's frequently reloaded. If there is no frequency, or if it's a very old data set, the operationality will go down. In the same way, the quality is going to monitor for the last year what has happened with this data set. If there were fields in that data set that were were not matching the requirements, if you had incomplete data, if there were data errors, if there was an issue with some validation rule, all these things will actually have effect on the quality KPI of the data set. So in this case, we have 99%. It means that the biggest part of this data set is very reliable. Well, actually reliable because it's of a good quality, and reliable because it has been reloaded frequently. Then the third KPI is about popularity, and that's what you see a lot also on shopping systems. When you want to buy products, the most popular products are always put on top. Why is that? Well, because if a lot of people are actually buying that product, that means that it's probably a good product. Well, here it's the same. If a lot of people are actually using this data set, it will get a high popularity. So if a lot of users, if a lot of processes, if a lot of reports are actually relying on that data set, I will have a high popularity. If it's not the case, I will have a low popularity. So you see the difference, and it's the combination of those 3 KPIs that will actually make the data set understandable for an end user, because he knows, oh, it's probably this data set that I need. So let's have a look at the data set and the interface. So you have this little view entity button here. Here you will see all the details you need to understand this data set. What do you see there? Well, for instance, here you see different field statistics. It's like profiling your data. So you have different fields in your data set, and for each field is going to analyze what is the maximum value, how many null values do I have, what is the cardinality, how many counts do I have, and so on and so forth. So it will actually give you some detail about the profile, and you can even go further. It's not only the profile of the data that is shown in numeric values and with values, but it's also, for instance, if you take the country field, it will show you the distribution of the countries visually, so that you understand how this data set is actually constructed. So this gives you very valuable information about the data set itself, and it's all generated automatically. What you also have is that you can look at sample data, and here we're talking about real sample data. So this is not just a top 10 of your data set, it's actually taking a sample and going through all the different values, so that you ensure that you have a representative set of values in your data set. So it's a real sample that is taken on your data set. Also, if you want to know how this data set has been created, has been calculated, you have the lineage information that will give you some details about how this data set is actually built up, how it is consolidated, what are the different sources that are behind, and also where it is used. So if it is used in a specific Qlik report, it will actually be shown also here in the lineage report. So you will have a lot of information just with the screen on that specific data set. Good. So let's now look at what we see here at the bottom. That's also a very interesting one. This is showing what is the relationship between this specific data set with the other data sets that are available in the catalog. So here I have a lot of transactions saying that, for instance, customers are actually buying things. And it tells me that it is related to specific other data sets, like my countries, like my employees, like my cities. So these specific data sets are actually connected to this one. How does the system know that? Because it analyzed all the information. This can be information that comes from a modeling tool. This can be information that comes from a metadata tool, or this can be information that is calculated automatically by Data Catalyst. So it will make links between the different data sets. Of course, if all the tables come from the same database, you will just take over the existing star schema of the database and you will have that information. But if the information comes from different sources, from different places, this can become very interesting. Good. Now let's select a few of these tables. For instance, we take our transaction table and we take also our employee table. And now we want actually to look at all the different transactions by employee. So let's select those two data entities, and I'm going to add them to my cart. So by clicking on Add to Cart, it's getting added to the cart. And I can, in that way, browse through all the different entities and combine all these things inside a cart, like I would do if I do shopping. In this case, I know that these are the two entities I want to work with. And now that I have collected these entities in my cart, I can take a specific action. So by clicking on Take Action, I can actually publish this information for me as an end user to be consumed. So for instance, if I want to push that towards Qlik or towards Tableau software or towards another tool like an advanced analytics tool, well, I can use these actions that you see here. Now let me show you what this would mean if I publish this to Qlik. So with one single click here, I push this towards my Qlik frontend. The same will work with Tableau. So this is just an example. So what is happening is it's just actually preparing all these data sets and putting them inside a Qlik Sense document. And so the only thing I need to do now is click on Qlik Insights, which is a feature of Qlik Sense. And Qlik Sense will analyze the data sets and also the combination of the data sets, because I took both transactions, but also information about employees. It will make the association automatically, and it will propose me different visuals of this data set. For instance, here I see the sum of sales by the name of my employees, or I can see a distribution of the sales by country and by city. And the only thing I need to do is to add to the sheets the parts of the information in which I am interested. Here, for instance, I have a distribution by office name. Here I have a contribution of the countries. And by making all these selections, I now have all the information available in my dashboard. And I can start to analyze it, to look into the data, to make selections like you would do in an ordinary dashboard tool. This is what we do here because we are in Qlik Sense. So you see, the only thing the end user needed to do was to go from the catalog, make a selection, and push them automatically towards the front end. This works in Qlik Sense. It can work if you want to take action. You can take the action both to Qlik Sense, but also to other reporting tools and other visualization tools. So you see, those things are tightly linked together and will make the data really easily available by the end user. Now, a question that you could ask yourself if you're looking at the way this data has been, in which you can navigate in the data, is how are we going to prepare this data? So this is just a catalog. It's the visible part for the end user. But of course, what you can do is you can actually you can actually prepare this data. So if I move towards the data preparation, and let's, for instance, take one of the data flows that I have created to prepare my data, and I move to the data flow designer, what you have there is a fully visual tool that will help you to prepare your data from the data, the original data source. For instance, here I have contact information coming from the cloud, and some information also coming from my ERP system, for instance, that has been pushed into a data lake, and then that has been combined. Of course, you can define how this information is going to be combined. So you can add some specific join criteria where you want, for instance, in this case, to link those two based on a primary key, foreign key. You can also intervene on the way you're going to transform the data. So for instance, in this case, I create an expression with case when, or you can create any expression you want, combining data that comes from different sources. You can filter the data. So in this case, for instance, we put a filter that is actually splitting my contacts alphabetically from A to L into one data set and from M to Z into another data set, and then taking also the full set and moving it based on the filter towards an aggregation step in which I'm going to group the information by last name and aggregate by counting the different lines towards an aggregated contact set. And once this has been defined, this preparation has been defined, I can automate this, execute this, and what is going to happen is that you're going to see in your data sources all this information available. For instance, if you take the aggregated context to which this data has been pushed, if I go now to the discover part, so let's move to the discover part, and let's go to the specific entities and look for the aggregated data source. So you have the aggregated context we were talking about. Well, if you look here, you can then now start to enrich this data. So I have prepared the data to push it towards the end user, but I can also enrich the data by either loading this information from metadata tools. If you have metadata tools in which you have a business description for the context, if you have, so in this case, it's a description of the whole entity. But what you also can have is you can enrich the information. Let's go one level deeper. Behind the context here, you have the last name, you have accounts, so you can actually start to describe those things together. Now, one of the things also that you can do there is that you can enrich data and do a lot of things automatically. Let's take another example. If we go to another entity, so let's move back towards the entities there, the different entities there, and let's take another example entity, which is my full records. So I will search for a data load that I did. Here, actually, I loaded a lot of customer names. And actually, I want to make sure that this information gets pushed to the end user in the correct way. So what we're going to do, I'm going to view in this records, and I will see that here I have, for instance, one of the fields that you find here is called national ID. So if we take this field, national ID, let's have a look at this. Well, if you look at this field, you will see that that this field has actually specific tags linked to this. It's a social security number. Now, this tag has been added automatically by the system. So it recognized this field to be a social security number. And so it tagged it as social security number automatically. Why does it do that? Well, because social security number are sensitive information. So I don't want this information to be publicly available. So what does the system automatically do? It's one of the rules that I have defined, is that actually, if I look at the way the data is loaded, I want this data to be automatically scrambled, to be automatically obfuscated based on the fact that it is a national ID number. And so based on that, it will actually be pushed, but the value will be scrambled and will not be visual data. So if I go here to my catalog and I search for my full records, so when you see here, well, the data that is behind will be totally totally obfuscated. So if you look at the data there, you won't have the specific security numbers that are put there, but it will be replaced by different data. So you see, this is a number that is not representing the real number, but it's a number that it will always be the same if we're talking about the same person. So it is still unique. It is still all the links will still work, but it is automatically obfuscated by the by the system. So these kind of things is how the data is going to be enriched. So you have all the data, and that's what makes it great to manage, because now you will have an entity that is actually centrally available, but also on which you can, or I could also add some comments. For instance, here, if I want to work with that specific data set, let's go back again to the entity full records. There we go. And we want actually to modify in this entity a few sorry, not the full records, but the actual fields that you have behind. I would like to see about this national ID. When I had a look at the data, actually I found out that this data is not always a social security number. So I'm going to add a topic where we say this is not always national security number. And then someone else could answer, indeed, we also have international numbers. That's why we have obfuscated the data for end users to avoid any confusion, for instance. So you would actually have a whole history of comments that can be added by the actual end users. So that's what you have with this tool, is that you can actually prepare your data, you can actually work with the data, you can enrich the data. So that's what we find here in the solution. So let's go further towards the conclusion. So we first, in the first step, I didn't show that into detail, but you can actually connect to all different types of data sources, to data lakes. You can validate the data automatically, add validation rules to ensure the data quality. This will, of course, have an impact on the data quality KPI that you have on the data. Then you can enrich the data. We've shown that by adding tags automatically, or by actually using data governance tool to enrich that. We also showed how you could prepare the data by transforming it and make it available for end user. And then finally, we had an interface in the catalog where you could publish and actually consume the data directly in the front-end tools. So you really have a way to get access to this data that is more technical, but that can, in that case, be consumed by non-technical users. That's what this catalog will enable. And what makes the difference compared to, for instance, a specific other catalogs that you could find on the market, is that actually it really allows you to collaborate, to have different people collaborating together while still keeping a direct access to the data, full access if you want, and also a direct integration to your front-end tools to actually consume the data at the end. So you will have automated security, you will have scalability, because we will leverage the system, and that's what makes this this solution quite interesting in the market. Good. As a wrap up, we talked about different challenges that you have when you have a lot of data that needs to be made available. These are the challenges that you see here on the left. You want to make sure that you need to convert the data, to have them in the right format, to make them available to users, to ensure that they are reliable. And actually, the solution that we proposed here will bring some governance solutions so that you can profile your data, that you can automatically tag the data, that you can make it available through a data marketplace, that actually you can also push that without complex ETL processes. It can be on-premise or on cloud. We didn't discuss that into detail, but it can be deployed really in different ways. It will convert automatically the data in the format you need. So that's the solution that we proposed with and that will allow you to manage your data properly. Good. This brings us to the end of this session. We still have a few minutes left for questions. So Edwin, did you get any question from the audience?
Yeah, I got one on. So a participant asks, in the beginning you mentioned that there is a version of Qlik Data Catalyst for QVD. So can you say a bit more about that? And that person asks also, can it retrofit in an already existing Qlik Sense environment where you have developed dashboards and have your QVDs hanging around?
Yes, that's indeed a good question. When you're working with a Qlik Sense environment, and we explained that in one of our previous workshops, you can work with multiple layers of QVDs. So QVDs are the actual property layer of Qlik that allows to store data in different layers, so that you can go from the raw data all the way down to the actual associative model that you have behind Qlik. Now, those QVDs can become really a mess if you have a lot of projects. And when you use Data Catalyst, there is a specific version that we mentioned in the beginning, which is called Data Catalyst for QVD, which does exactly all the things that we have shown today, which is profiling the data, cataloging the data, making it available through self-service, allow to ensure that the data is reliable, measure the fact that the data is frequently reloaded or not, on all these things. So all this information is gathered by Data Catalyst, but specifically for QVDs. So that means that with Data Catalyst for QVD, you have a solution that will actually organize all your QVDs, even if you started already a project before. That was also a point of the question. If you started already a project and already have a lot of QVD, you can just plug Data Catalyst for QVD to your existing projects, and you will start to be able to catalog all your QVDs and start to make them available for end users through this catalog.
Okay, thank you. Another question I got a couple of times is, so you're referring to KPIs like quality and the usage. How are those KPIs updated and with what frequency?
So the KPIs are actually calculated each time you refresh the data, but also when you don't refresh the data, because some of the KPIs are actually showing how old a data set can be. So if a data has not been updated for a while, the KPI, the first KPI, will go down because it is not getting updated. So these KPIs are actually reloaded very frequently, and the idea is really that you get a full picture of which data sets are reliable and which are not, based on their data quality, based on the reload frequency, and also on the usage that the people do of the data sets. And also, what is interesting, because I see that there is a question also on what is the definition of those KPI, what is the definition behind? Well, this definition is something that Data Catalyst propose out of the box, like a combination of frequency and reload times, a combination of data quality percentages and things like that. But it can be completely adapted to your needs. So you can actually define your own business rules behind those KPIs and apply them to your complete data set. So if, for instance, for some data set in certain conditions, it is very important to have a frequent reload every 5 minutes. But for another data set, like for instance, quarterly budget, it's not important to have a 5-minute reload, but if you have one every quarter, it's enough. So you can actually adapt those rules to your own needs.
Okay, thank you. We've time for one more question. So I've one from a Power BI user. So the person says, we are using Power BI. We are not a Qlik user. So can you confirm that I can use Data Catalyst without starting to use Qlik Sense?
Indeed. So Data Catalyst is agnostic to to the front-end tool you want to use. So you can perfectly use Data Catalyst in combination with Power BI and start to actually connect. Let's say, for instance, you're using Power BI in an Azure environment. Well, you would have Data Catalyst that can connect to all the Azure data components and also to catalog all this information and make it available for end users. So yes, it's really independent from the front end.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Francois. We are right at noon, so great timing. Thank you all for your participation. As mentioned, we will put the other webinars online on demand very soon. And again, make sure to attend the time extender one next week, because that will be very interesting in terms of automating your data warehouse environment. And with that, we want to conclude this webinar. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Bye.
Goodbye, Edwin.